Greetings, Zimbabwe, Africa, and the world. Welcome to episode 4 of In Conversation with Trevor, where we go beyond the headlines and beyond the sensational. Today, we are in conversation with Zimbabwe's Minister of Energy and Power Development, Advocate Fortune Chasi. Right, Honorable Minister Fortune Chasi,
thank you.
Welcome to In Conversation with Trevor.
Thank you.
There is an image in my mind that impressed me. Your response to Cyclone Idai was you led from the front, you were exemplary. What made you do that?
I think that there are situations in our country when certain things happen that we need to leave our comfort zones and be real people, not ministers or anybody higher up. That situation really created an opportunity for us as a country to unite and have a common approach to a very serious problem.
Which raises the question, I'm always amazed, you're not a typical politician. What made you get into politics?
Yeah, I must admit, I don't consider myself a politician in the strict sense, but I think there comes a time when we must save our country. I am where I am because some people took certain decisions to enable an environment where I could thrive and flourish. I could be out in the rural areas, living there. I've got people that I went to school with that are still there. They look much older than myself. And so that really motivated me, an opportunity to serve.
What's your motivation? I'm fascinated again by, you love boxing, you
Yes.
love music.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, let me start with music. If you recall, in 2014 in December, I was fired as a Deputy Minister of Justice.
You were fired?
Yes, I was
How
fired.
did that feel?
It was sore because I'd only done 1 year. And I really had a lot of energy. I was in my area of training and comfort. And I saw that and felt that I had a lot to offer in terms of initiating policy positions, initiating laws, and so forth. So it was really hurtful. And so that, and I lost the space to articulate myself.
So you decided music and boxing would fill the gap?
Yes, music especially. Because nobody could stop me from singing. So I spent a lot of time. In fact, at high school, at Mpopoma High School, I was fired from the choir. But, every crisis provides opportunities, just as the energy crisis that we have now is huge opportunities. So I did things. I decided that I was going to sing as a way of expressing myself. I sang about free elections. I sang about child marriages, any topic. I spent a lot of time in the ghetto, in the studios, with the likes of Soldier Love, Killer T, Gatsby Warrior, and I enjoyed it.
And boxing?
Boxing is really for fitness. So I do 1 hour from 5 to 6. It's very good for cardio.
Let me briefly ask you, you are on social media, you appear approachable. How is the abuse on social media? How do you treat that?
I think that as a leader and now as a minister of government, one must be prepared to take criticism. A lot of it may be unjustified. There are many rude people, particularly on Twitter. They use unpalatable language. Some of them are motivated by malice. They believe that being abusive is macho, it makes you good. There are ghost accounts there that are there principally to attack other people.
Does that sting? Does it ever sting?
It used to. One thing that Twitter in particular has taught me is patience with people. And the patience that I've been able to generate on Twitter I've also translated it into private relationships.
Interesting. Let's get to the elephant in the room, the power crisis,
Yes.
fuel crisis. How much of this is legacy and how much of it is mismanagement in the recent past?
Yeah, I think this has been coming over a long period of time. And if one wants to play the blame game, which a lot of people try and do from time to time, you really blame all of us. In the sense that when you look at the debt overhang on ZESA, almost every category that you can think of is in there. And what disappoints me at this moment in time is we're talking about everything else. I cannot hear a chorus on encouragement of people to pay what they consumed already. So you have private citizens, you and me, you have the corporate sector, industry and commerce, you have local authorities, you have farmers, everybody is in there, owing this huge amount of money to ZESA. And everyone is complaining about load shedding. Nobody is standing up and speaking vociferously around the issue of the debt. Let me put it this way. If I were to receive 400 million of the 1.2 billion, we could sort out the problem overnight. So it's within ourselves to sort out the problem.
So you've been threatening to name people, which assumes you know them. Has that gotten you results in terms of people paying up what they owe, corporates paying up what they owe?
Not meaningfully, but we are putting in structures to help to accelerate recovery. And I think the public needs to understand that ZESA has got a legal duty, an obligation to itself to mitigate its own losses. So we cannot continue to sell power, provide power to people who do not pay. But assuming that people are not switched off, the system is going to switch itself off eventually because ZESA is insolvent as we speak.
How serious is the electricity crisis?
We have a habit of describing difficult situations as being challenges. And I want to confirm that our situation is beyond that. It has graduated into a massive problem. And I'm hoping that the difficulties which all of us are sharing, including the Minister of Energy, will help to galvanize us as a nation and come together as we did in a few instances, for example, constitution making, to address this problem. We all need to come together and realize that this is not an opportunity for politics. It's an opportunity to realize that we can sink if we do not come together and provide lasting solutions to the challenge.
So let's talk about the lasting solutions. What concrete plans do you have, concrete plans, about resolving the electricity crisis? Long-term, short-term, medium-term, concrete plans, Mr. Minister.
Let me start with short-term. I've indicated to you that if the public, the consumers of ZESA power, out of the 1.2 billion, pay 400 million, will deal significantly with the challenges that we face.
That's short-term?
That's short-term. That's probably the most immediate thing that we can do. And I must say that I'm delighted by the fact that commerce and industry, mining sector, for example, exporters, and other consumers have been approaching me to say, look, can we come up with a structure to deal with this? And this is why this crisis is so important for us. It should be a rallying point for us without reference to political or ideological preferences to come together to resolve the problem. So, because all of us are load shedding. When we load shed, we don't ask for your ZANPF card or MDC card or what position in life you are. It just has to happen. So we have a common problem requiring us to come together to find a common solution.
Medium term?
Medium term, we need various types of investments, particularly in renewables. We need projects that are implemented within a short distance across the country, grids that can give us bits of power across the country. And we're actively working on this. It depends on a variety of issues. For example, we have to work on the tariff. Work is at an advanced stage. The price of power simply must go up. Everyone, and I'm sure everyone in this room, admits that we're giving away power and we're digging a big hole for ZESA.
So at the moment, Minister, we're paying $0.01 for a kilowatt of power. The regional average is $0.09. That's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And, for many years, ZESA hasn't had a tariff increase. We need to look at ZESA as a business. That's why we have the challenges that we have.
So you talk about the tariff being adjusted soon. How soon is that? Because the other problem, Minister, is the lack of agency in resolving some of these issues.
Yeah, actually, well, when I was appointed, I immediately identified the tariff as a key issue that we needed to put on the agenda. And I'm glad that we have formally begun to discuss it. We have held various consultations with the CZI, with the mining people and others. And time allowing, would have loved much, much more consultation. I think that is what is contemplated by our Constitution. It's also a proper thing to do for us to carry everyone with us in terms of arriving at the tariff. We may come up with a tariff that some people won't like, but we should feel happy that we've carried out sufficient consultation.
As a long-term plan, Minister, I mean, any serious investor looking at coming into Zimbabwe, power is a big issue. Why not come up with a tariff that's going to make an investor sitting in Germany, in America, think that Zimbabwe is serious about resolving the power crisis? Come up with a tariff, lock it down for 20 years, so that an investor can see that I'll have good returns if I go to Zimbabwe. Is that one of the proposals that we're looking at?
Yes, we have so many approaches that we can take. But let me emphasize the fact that the tariff is important for at least two reasons. The first one is to ensure that ZESA is solvent and can continue to carry out business on a going concern basis. The second one is precisely what you're saying. Any investor who wants to bring in new investment in the energy sector will look at the tariff and relate that to the capacity of ZESA to pay them, because ZESA will be the off-taker of the power that is produced. And so this is why we have urgently dealt with the matter. It's not yet really in the public domain, but I can assure
you are not able to share with us what you...
No, at the moment it has to go through the necessary processes. But I can tell you and I can confirm we have no choice. The tariff must go up.
Can I push you on the agency of this matter? Yeah. The processes we understand, but surely we should be in a position to say next week something is happening, because this is an urgent crisis, Minister.
I can say next week.
Next week,
yes.
Okay. So you're promising these people next week this issue is going to be resolved?
Next week you'll need more money to buy ZESA.
Let's move on, Minister. How serious is the fuel crisis?
Yeah, I think, when people are in queues day in, day out, we must describe that as a serious crisis. It's not good use of the time of our people. They spend time being unproductive. And for me, as the person who has responsibility around those issues, it's very hurtful when you pass through queues, endless queues from time to time. So there are a number of issues. We definitely have Forex challenges. We need to ensure that our LC profiles are properly coordinated in terms of ensuring that when one lapses, there is no gap, because that is what actually creates a problem some of the time. But another issue is the fact that we have a significant number of players in the industry who are selfish. I say selfish because I'm inundated on a daily basis by calls and messages from members of the public who are told by service station operators that there's no fuel when there actually has been a delivery. Some of them are selling this in drums. They take the tanker and they put the fuel in drums and they go somewhere and they sell that in the black
Why are we
market.
not taking action on those people that we know are being selfish, not playing according to what their license is saying?
Yes, I believe that when one makes a threat, they should make a threat that they will carry out. I've made that threat. I've identified some service stations where there is serious misbehavior, abuse of the people of Zimbabwe who are sacrificing foreign currency and are depending on these people that we've licensed on the basis that whatever work they are going to do is going to be in the national interest. A lot of misbehavior, we have already commenced action.
That's good.
We want to be legal in the processes that we take, but certainly you'll be hearing from us soon.
So you've made the threat, you'll be carrying out the action.
We'll be carrying it out.
How soon is soon?
As soon as the necessary process of making sure that we give them adequate time to explain themselves. Because the public has got evidence. All we need to do is to speak to people who have gone to a service station, the ones that have made reports to me or to Zera, and we ensure that we issue a show cause order against the service station to explain themselves, and if we're not satisfied, we then make sure that they're out of the business. We are not going to tolerate indiscipline and misbehavior in the sector. But of primary importance is the fact that when you regulate something, you need to be able to understand it. And I think that our regulatory authority all along has been regulating in darkness without any evidence. And this is why we've been speaking about the monitoring system, which we're actively working towards implementing.
So I gather, Minister, that as one of the short-term measures, members of the Chamber of Mines
Yes.
and CZI have approached you to say they want to form a consortium that will be able to import power as a short measure using their own forex.
Yes.
And be able to put some of that excess capacity into the grid. What's your response to that? Are you amenable to that?
Yes, I'm excited by it. I think any form of assistance that we can get is critical, but also of fundamental importance is the recognition that the private sector must, and I think going forward, will play a bigger role in the provision of power in the country. And I think that is as it should be. As government, we would like to restrain ourselves to simply being an enabler for businesses. We are looking at solar now. There should be huge opportunities for local investors and external investors. And so the approach that these organizations you mentioned have taken is clearly in sync and in line with
How soon can we see that happening? Because if it does happen, these are big consumers.
Yes.
It would release quite a lot of power to domestic consumers and others. How soon can we see the CZI and the Chamber of Mines proposal being implemented?
Pretty soon. There are two ways that they seek to participate. One is to help us to pay our external debt for power. And the other is simply to ensure that they assist in the purchase of power themselves. They've got the capacity, and it's also within their interests to assure and ensure themselves of adequate and certain provision of power on a day-to-day basis. So a lot of work has already been done. We need to be formal and legal in what we are doing. But I think the concept
Given
is
the crisis,
yes.
formal and legal,
yes.
I'll push you again.
Yes.
The agency.
Yes, extremely urgent.
Right.
Yeah, they will tell you that some of them I've met at 7 a.m. at every meeting that we have had, because that's the time that we start work. We're in a crisis situation. It can never be business as usual. So my doors as minister are open. 24 hours every day. And people come with suggestions and they will confirm that we've met on an urgent basis, some of them several times. We have no bureaucratic structures for which gives you a feeling of importance that you are Minister of Energy or anything like that. It's time to produce.
And any agency around independent power producers?
Yes, independent power producers, as you know, have been in place for some time. But my major criticism of the approach that we've had in the past is that we have not had a plan. So Trevor would come to me and say, I want to have a plant for 150 megawatts, and we license them. But we need to be very clear of the deficit that we have and have projects that are designed and calculated to knock off that deficit. But we want to be a net exporter of power. There are countries, Zambia is load shedding at the moment, and we would like to see power generation as a national business where we can sell power through the Southern African power pool and provide power to our neighbors who may be challenged in that respect.
Are there any significant projects around independent power producers that you could share with us, either in the pipeline or fully implemented?
Yes, we have launched a very aggressive investment approach to renewable energies. Some weeks ago, I was in Portugal. I can tell you that I was overwhelmed by the interest in Zimbabwe, to the extent that within the following week, we had an investor that I had met in Portugal sending their team to come and discuss with us on a very, very serious basis. Now, what we need to do is to ensure that our processes and procedures are so efficient that we don't give investors the runaround when they come here. We cannot afford that when we're in a crisis. And so we're doing everything that is possible. We're working on measures that will make Zimbabwe attractive. But our measures must be extraordinary, because we're in an extraordinary situation.
Can you share with us the extraordinary measures intended to attract?
I'll give you an example. We have moved in very quickly to remove any tax or VAT on solar projects, because that's a key strategic area for us. And we are continuing to look at how we can better, we consider a raft of measures around taxation, because we want to encourage investment in this area to ensure that we avoid ever again getting into the situation where we are in.
Talk to us about, is there any possibility, that one day we'll wake up and there's total darkness? What's the situation with Wange? What is the situation with the thermal power station, other thermal power stations that we have? What's the situation with the Kariba water levels? Are we still at 29%? We're in the darkness as far as that is concerned.
Yeah, well, it is possible. And we need all of us to be conscious of that possibility.
So darkness is possible?
Well, it is possible. Where there's light, there's a possibility of darkness. and so the key issue really, you are talking of 29% at Kariba. It has since gone beyond that.
So where are we now?
We are below 24%. And the continuous southward movement of Kariba is evident. And it would be improper for us all not to recognize that we need to take evasive action now. That's why we're developing the integrated resource plan. We need a good mix of sources of energy to hedge against the very clear and direct threat from Kariba. There is no way that we can generate water and put it into Kariba. There's climate change is upon us.
That's frightening. 24%.
Yes, 24%.
And receding.
Yes, and receding. And we don't know what the prospects are regarding rainfall this season. Some are not very optimistic. So that is the reality that we have to face. We are also faced with a situation where our thermals are antiquated. I was in Bulawayo the other time. We are supposed to produce 90 megawatts. Look at the structures, you can see cracks, you can see holes in those things. And we are trying to come up, and we already have funding to put in a project there. And so that's just an example. If you look at Hwange, day in, day out, we have breakdowns. And so...
What's the capacity, and can we draw comfort from the Hwange infrastructure right now?
Well, like I'm telling you, breakdowns are on every day. They are antiquated. Ideally, we should invest in new thermals and other forms of energy. And so we need money, and I need people to understand that the payment of the ZESA debt is a critical component of our resolution of the current challenges. I don't believe that I should sweet talk people and tell them nice stories. We have a problem here which requires all of us to resolve.
Talk to us about your negotiations with the South Africans and our neighboring countries for import, particularly South Africans.
Yes.
There's been a hype around that.
Yes.
Is there anything going to happen, and how soon is that going to happen, and what does it amount to?
Okay. What we have done is we've sent our teams from my ministry, from ZESA itself, from Ministry of Finance, and from Reserve Bank to go and discuss with the technical people at Eskom. One is to recognize that it's not as if Eskom is awash with power. And we are simply appealing to them, riding on our promise that we will pay our debts. We have to pay our debts as a country and as individuals. We need to lessen our appetite for free things. As a people, we need to be able to deal with that and not expect other countries to look after us as if we're their children, and not to treat power as if it's the air that we're breathing right now. I'm sure nobody has juiced their noses to ensure that they get air. So we want that aspect to be understood. I then subsequently met last week Minister Gwede Mantashe in South Africa. And of course, I was very grateful for the help that we have received. For some time, they went on giving us 50 megawatts, but they couldn't do it anymore. They stopped. So
they couldn't do it because we were not paying, or because they didn't have capacity?
Principally and ostensibly because we're not paying.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that they did have capacity to give us the 50 megawatts, but we must pay. So the approach they have taken is the approach that we have to take here. And people need to understand that we cannot continue to have open-ended discussions which do not bring money onto the table to enable ZESA to do the work that it is doing. So the current state of the discussion is that Eskom is governed in the Ministry of Energy, but they also have, they call it a Department of Enterprises. And those two ministries must coordinate and come up with a position. I'm cautiously optimistic. I know that there are so many stories being bandied about, but the truth of the matter is that where we left the discussion is that the South African minister will take or process what we discussed through their own system. So, of course, I did ask for 400 megawatts. It's up to them to look at their resources and decide whether they can do that for us. And
so if we paid them the 80 million US that we owe, that's what we owe, isn't it? 80 million
for both, it's slightly less now.
Slightly less now. If we paid that, we'd be able to get 400 megawatts. Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily.
Not as simple as that.
Yeah. When you owe money to one of the shops and you go and pay off, you do not become immediately entitled to something else, especially if your conduct hasn't been really much appreciated by them. So yes, but we have a culture in SADC of working together and helping each other from time to time where power is concerned. And so I know that the South Africans are sympathetic to our situation. And apart from that, our economies are also interlinked. And provided that we are going to pay, that should help to motivate them.
Given the agents of the matter, Minister, our productive sector at the moment is basically crawling. Can you not lean on your minister, on your cabinet colleagues, to ensure that you find that 80 million and pay it tomorrow, and begin to work on your track record so that we've got power, industries work, manufacturers work, and we export and we get the money we need to.
Look, Trevor, I think the first point is us here. We owe 1.2 billion. Are we happy as businesses to continue to operate on that basis? The tariff is not cost reflective, and people are really getting power for next to nothing. So many illegal connections. I'm going to be dealing with them. I'll visit them, especially those that I had today in Chitungwiza. I want to advise them to make sure they regularize their connections. So much theft that is happening. We just have a litany of problems around energy in this country, and we need order. And it's one of the things that I'm expected and that I'm going to deliver in this particular sector.
So let me throw the ball back into your court.
Yes.
As far as the 1.2 billion that we collectively owe you.
Yes.
Is it not your responsibility and your colleagues to ensure that this money is collected yesterday? Switch off those that don't pay and switch them off yesterday.
Yes.
So that, why are we not doing that?
Okay, let me give you one example. Local authorities owe about 350 million. Should I switch them off tomorrow? Are we
yes,
prepared?
please. Yes.
Are you prepared to deal with cholera that will result? Are you prepared to deal with the cholera? Because that's one of the consequences. But let me say...
So, Minister, let me just hold there.
Yeah.
This is very interesting. The response was an emphatic yes. As a way of ensuring that misbehavior won't be tolerated.
Yeah.
Cut them off and let's deal with the consequences. Because we're encouraging bad behavior, and that bad behavior is hurting all of us.
Right. No, it's an interesting proposition. But let's analyze and understand the impact of the decision that we'll make. If we switch off, there'll be no water. We switch off today. Hospitals and clinics are already challenged. And it's a matter that distresses me as Energy Minister. But if we were to do that, people would start dying today. If the public thinks that is a proper thing for us to do, let's agree as a nation to just do it. Let's also agree that we shut out the entire commerce and industry. Everything.
We haven't paid.
We haven't paid.
Yes.
And there are important players in there, right, who have not paid. They may have,
Minister,
yeah.
I think this is a desperate situation that requires drastic measures.
Yes.
Dealing with this thing in a piecemeal manner is not going to help us. The tolerance that you are exhibiting right now is not going to help us.
I'm actually very, very intolerant to this situation. This is why when I came in, I pushed that government must pay, because people cannot believe that because they're government departments or they're parastatals, they can consume ZESA power for free. And so we are coming up with a rollout program now, which has started at my ministry. If you go there now, there's a meter. Because when I spoke to people, nobody could tell me how much power we consume. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm actually leading an economic entity. And I've got to account for ZESA. And so we expect all government departments to be doing that. We are going to be carrying out audits. You can see the amount of light that is here. When you quantify that in kilowatt per hour terms, significant amount of power. So we are coming up with the regulations that will enable us to come and audit the power situation and take positions.
Minister, thank you so much.
Thank
First
you.
of all, for your passion,
Thank you.
for your energy,
Thank you.
and for investing so much time to engage with these very influential people who have made amazing suggestions that
Yes.
could improve the way you perform. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm deeply indebted. Thank you.